Imagine showing up to the airport. You've got your bags, you've got your ticket confirmation, you're ready to travel. And then you walk up to the check in counter and it's empty. No agents, no line, just a guy calmly taping a sign to the desk that says Spirit Airlines shut down. No more flights, no more customer service, just gone. That is exactly what happened to thousands of real passengers just days ago. And today we're going to talk about it because this affects all of us in different ways, whether you ever flew with Spirit Airlines or not. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you found me. Today we are going to talk about the collapse of Spirit Airlines. What happened? Why it happened? What it means for passengers who got stranded, and most importantly, what it means for the future of flying and your wallet. Because trust me, even if you never set foot on a Spirit plane in your life again, this story has something in it for you. Let's get right into it. So, we're going to start at the beginning. Spirit Airlines was one of the biggest budget airlines in the United States, and you know what I'm talking about. Bright yellow planes, super low base fares. This is the airline that millions of everyday people who just wanted to get somewhere without breaking the bank depended on for years. But behind the scenes, Spirit had been struggling for a long time. The airline filed for bankruptcy protection, and this is the first major U.S. airline to do so since 2011. They tried to reorganize, get back into the groove of things. They tried to cut costs. They even tried to merge, first with JetBlue and then talks with Frontier emerged. But ultimately, it led nowhere. And then earlier this month, it was finally over. Spirit Airlines announced that it had started an orderly wind down, that's what they call it, of operations, effective immediately. The carrier told customers not to go to their airport checkout counter, said all flights had been canceled, and noted that customer service was no longer available to passengers. Just like that. Done. Just like that. 17,000 jobs impacted. Passengers stranded, and many people found out not through a phone call or email, but by arriving at the airport and seeing a guy calmly posting signs. That is not okay. And we're going to talk about that. Now, you might be wondering, how does an airline just suddenly collapse like that? Let me break it down real simple for you. Spirit Airlines was already in a fragile position after the pandemic. Travel demand had shifted. Budget travelers were being more careful with their spending and their planning. And then fuel prices started rising sharply due to global tensions. The airline reported a 246 million net loss and was selling spare engines and furloughing pilots just to stay afloat. They tried everything to stay open. They added premium offerings like Go Comfy seating and tiered pricing to attract higher spending passengers. But it wasn't enough. It was working. And here's something worth noting. There was a moment where Spirit could have merged with JetBlue. That deal could have potentially saved the airline. But the Justice Department, the United States Justice Department, argued that the merger would violate antitrust regulations. A judge sided with them, and the deal was struck down. Whether that was the right call is something people are still debating about, hotly as well. But what we do know is, without that lifeline, Spirit ran out of options. Now let's talk about the real human cost here. Because this wasn't just a business story. This is people's vacations, people's family emergencies, people's hard-earned money that they already spent. Passengers arriving at Fort Lauderdale Airport that weekend were still being dropped off for flights that no longer existed, learning only at curbside that Spirit had shut down overnight. Check-in counters sat empty. Customer service lines were unavailable. And many passengers said that they had received no prior warning before arriving at the airport. Think about that for a second. No warning, no phone call, no email the night before. Passengers just showed up and found out in the airport. Now for refunds. Spirit said that it would automatically process refunds for any flight purchased through the airline with a credit or a using a credit or debit card. But here's the catch: compensation for passengers who booked using a voucher, credit, or Spirit points will be determined later through the bankruptcy process. Sad but true. So if you use points to purchase your ticket, you may be waiting for a long time. And passengers will not be reimbursed for costs from the cancellations, like emergency hotels, unless covered by travel insurance. So if you scramble to find a last minute hotel that night, sadly, that bill is on you. The lesson here: travel insurance is not optional. It's essential for things like these. And always book with a credit card so that you have the option to dispute a charge if something goes wrong. To be fair though, some airlines did step up. United Airlines, Delta, JetBlue, and Southwest Airlines agreed to cap ticket prices for Spirit customers who needed to rebook their canceled flights. United capped one-way fares mostly at $199, with longer flights up to $299. And outside of aviation, Hertz Rent-A-Car, they offered one-way rental deals, allowing stranded travelers to drive between cities as an alternative. I think that was really nice. It was really a decent response. But let's be honest though, those were also business decisions. Airlines almost immediately started offering discounted tickets, with JetBlue announcing new routes and other carriers looking to fill the void that Spirit left behind. Where one airline falls, others see the opportunity. It's all about profits for them, guys. Here's the part that affects every single person watching this video. Even if you never flew on Spirit Airlines, not even one time in your life, Spirit kept prices low. That was their whole purpose. That was their game plan. And when a budget airline like Spirit operated on a route, every other airline on that same route had to be more competitive with their pricing. And that is how competition works. A CBS News analysis found that average fares jumped 23%, roughly $60 for a round trip, when Spirit exited a route. And overall passenger volume fell 20% after Spirit left the market. Let me say that again. Fares went up 23% just because Spirit stopped flying that route. So Spirit leaving does not just affect Spirit customers, it affects everyone buying a plane ticket. Just so you know. The average domestic airfare in 2025 was $387, and that number doesn't even include baggage fees, seat selection fees, and all the extra charges that airlines now tack on. Airlines have increasingly separated the base fare from the full cost of flying, so that $387 can very quickly become $500 or actually more by the time you get on the plane. Flying is getting more expensive, and with Spirit gone, that trend is not going in the right direction to benefit travelers like you and I. So what does the future of budget travel look like now? I'm glad you asked. Frontier Airlines is still operating and will likely try to absorb some of Spirit's former routes and customers. Other carriers will expand their routes. New routes will open, but here's the reality though. Spirit's role in driving down fares underscores just how important competition is in the aviation industry. And right now, there's less of it, less competition, now that Spirit has exited. For everyday travelers, especially those who depended on low fares to visit family, take a first vacation, or simply get somewhere they couldn't otherwise afford, this is a real loss for them. Budget travel made flying accessible, and accessibility matters. Going forward, book early, please. Use fare tracking tools. Be flexible with your travel dates, and seriously, get travel insurance. Because as we just saw, things can change overnight. Spirit Airlines wasn't perfect. Anyone who flew on them knows that. I didn't like them. Honestly, I didn't. The extra fees, the tight seats, and the no-frills experience, it wasn't for everyone. It just wasn't for me. But what they represented mattered. They represented the idea that flying doesn't have to only be for people who can afford premium prices. That regular everyday people deserve to get on a plane too. That's what they were trying to do. And now they're gone. 17,000 people lost their jobs. Thousands of passengers were left stranded without any warning. And the rest of us are going to feel it in our wallets coming soon. This is a story worth paying attention to. because it's not just about one airline. It's about what kind of travel industry we want to have in 2026 and beyond, and who gets to be part of it. If this video gave you something to think about, please like it and share it, and also drop a comment below. Tell me, did you ever did you ever fly on Spirit Airlines? Were you affected by the shutdown? I want to hear from you. And subscribe to the channel also if you're new here, because we cover stories like this regularly. See you in the next video, and thank you so much for watching.